Welcome back. Here's a quick recap. The leader of the Bakr Salamander Magic Corps, Morel Kazan, appeared equally surprised upon recognizing Limer. He responded by stating that he should have been the one asking that question. Upon hearing the exchange, Raon quickly recognized the individual. He recalled hearing about him before, the well-known leader of the Salamander Magic Corps, a figure often referred to as the Flame Serpent. Before the situation could settle into a calmer state, another voice suddenly cut through the air. It called out loudly toward Raon, questioning what he was doing in such a place. The unexpected interruption caused attention to shift once again. As Raon turned toward the direction of the voice, recognition dawned almost instantly. The person standing there was none other than Princess Jane of Bakr. If you're new here or need a refresher, check out the previous chapter. Now, let's dive into this new chapter. Raon recognized that it was the girl he had met at the Carmelon auction house, which immediately caused Jane to groan in frustration. She screamed out loudly, saying that she could clearly hear him, and then questioned how someone like him, whom she considered a fraud, dared to insult her. She sharply asked whether he had a death wish. Raon, maintaining a calm expression, questioned when exactly he had insulted her. In response, Jane groaned again, accusing him of having lied to her by claiming he was a direct descendant of Zieghardt. Raon replied in a composed tone, stating that he had never made such a claim in the first place. Jane stuttered slightly as she attempted to defend herself, insisting that he had manipulated the situation and the atmosphere in such a way that it had seemed as though he had implied it. Raon then remarked that if someone could be deceived merely by the mood of a conversation, then it was ultimately their fault for being misled. His words only caused Jane to groan louder in irritation. At that very moment, a sharp scream echoed through the area. A voice suddenly shouted, daring Raon not to speak to the princess in such a casual and disrespectful manner. From behind, Morel's disciple, Enild, stepped forward with a furious expression. He demanded to know how Raon dared to mock Princess Jane of Bakr, questioning whether he possessed more than one life to risk such behavior. Without hesitation, he ordered Raon to apologize immediately and to conduct himself with the proper level of respect and courtesy befitting royalty. Soon Martha stepped forward as well, her tone carrying a hint of annoyance as she remarked that the situation felt overly domineering. She questioned who exactly he thought he was to act in such a manner. Following this, several other magicians approached, their presence adding even more tension to the already heated atmosphere. They questioned whether the Corps was actively seeking a fight. Krop speaks back, accusing them of speaking without thought, as though they were simply saying whatever came to mind without restraint. The magicians went further, criticizing the frontier swordsman harshly. They claimed that such behavior was exactly what was wrong with them, stating that these so-called warriors had lost all sense of courtesy, as if their minds had been frozen over by the harsh conditions they lived in. In response, the swordsmen did not remain silent. They retorted confidently, stating that the magicians would crumble with just a single touch if they were ever tested in real combat. Amidst this growing conflict, Limer commented casually on the situation, remarking on what a lively and almost amusing atmosphere it had become. He added that it was rather nice to witness such energy, noting how it reminded him of youth and its fiery nature. Morel then spoke in a more serious tone, stating that it appeared the opposing group had arrived for the same reason he had mentioned earlier, the search for the missing person. He added that, in that case, the matter should be resolved quickly. According to him, they would complete the search efficiently, allowing him to return without wasting unnecessary time. He also remarked that the novices accompanying the other group did not seem particularly impressive or adequate for such a task. Hearing this, Limer responded with mild amusement, pointing out that Morel had referred to them as novices, yet from his perspective, they did not appear significantly different from the men under Morel's command. This comment seemed to spark a further reaction. Morel then proposed a solution, suggesting that, given how heated both sides had become, the matter should be settled through a sparring match. He explained that the losing side would be required to follow the instructions of the winning side. Whether one group would return or provide support would be entirely decided by the victor. As Limer considered this proposal, he briefly wondered whether his team would be alright under such conditions. However, Raon observed this and internally thought that Limer was rather poor at hiding his true feelings. Limer then stated that they had already reached the mission location, so it would not be appropriate to leave without at least drawing their swords. He then called out to Raon, announcing that he would act as their representative for the match. This decision clearly annoyed Raon, who silently cursed the troublesome elf for placing him in such a position. At that moment, Enild stepped forward once again, addressing his master with determination. he pleaded for permission to handle the match himself, stating that he could not remain idle after hearing such disrespect directed toward the princess and their nation. He declared that he would personally demonstrate what it meant to be a mage of Bakr and uphold their honor. Morel listened before nodding in agreement, expressing confidence in Enild's abilities and stating that he believed he would perform well. As they moved to the designated area for the sparring match, Enild stood on the ground and introduced himself with pride. He stated that he was a combat mage of the kingdom of Bakr and a direct disciple of the flame serpent, Morel. He declared that he would settle the insults that had been directed toward the princess. Before he could continue further, Raon interrupted him, remarking that he was being unnecessarily loud. He clarified that the purpose of the match was to decide the leadership of the missing person search, not to indulge in excessive dramatics. He also questioned whether Enild was even aware of what the princess had done in the first place. Enild was left momentarily speechless by this unexpected remark. However, his shock quickly turned back into anger as he raised his voice once again. He insisted that regardless of the circumstances, it did not change the fact that the princess had been insulted. He then demanded that Raon reveal his name, declaring that he would demonstrate the true greatness of Bakr's magic. He boldly claimed that Raon's sword would never even come close to grazing him. In response, Raon calmly called out to Dorian, asking him to bring what he needed. Dorian immediately acknowledged the request and turned toward the Vice Lord, seeking confirmation regarding the specific item. Upon hearing this exchange, those present were visibly surprised. A murmur spread through the crowd as they questioned what Raon was holding. Some wondered how such an item could suddenly appear, while others questioned the nature of what was being brought out. Their curiosity grew even stronger when they saw the object itself, as it appeared unusually large and resembled a massive club. They questioned what kind of weapon it was and how anyone could wield something so absurdly oversized. Raon then stepped forward, holding the weapon with ease. He introduced himself clearly, stating that his name was Raon Zieghardt. With a composed yet firm expression, he declared that he would use this club to defeat his opponent, adding bluntly that his opponent seemed in need of a proper beating. After Enild had been beaten in a single hit, the surrounding magicians were left completely awestruck. They murmured among themselves in disbelief, stating that there was no possible way Enild could have fallen in just a single hit. The shock on their faces was unmistakable, as none of them had expected such a swift and overwhelming outcome. Morel, who had been observing the match closely, appeared equally stunned. He remarked in disbelief that the brat had managed to strike while filling that massive club with an aura. He explained that the larger and blunter a weapon was, the more difficult it became to infuse it with aura effectively. For that very reason, most aura masters preferred to use swords, as they were far easier to handle and channel energy through. Only a small number of individuals chose to wield blunt weapons, as the difficulty required far greater control and mastery. Yet, despite all of this, Raon had managed to use aura with such a large club as if it were nothing. Raon then remarked that Enild had not been particularly impressive despite all the confidence and bold claims he had made earlier. Before anyone could respond properly, a sharp scream suddenly cut through the atmosphere. Jane stepped forward, her face filled with anger as she loudly accused Raon of being a coward. She declared that he had dared to attack Enild while he had been in the process of casting strengthening magic. According to her, such an action lacked any sense of honor, and therefore, the outcome of the duel should be considered invalid. Raon responded without hesitation, asking calmly whether she would make the same claim on an actual battlefield. His words caused Jane to freeze momentarily, leaving her unable to respond immediately. He continued, stating that he had been curious whether she would tell an enemy to stop simply because she had not been ready, especially if they already had a blade pressed against her throat. Jane attempted to interrupt, insisting that the situation had been a formal duel and should be treated differently. However, Raon countered her argument by explaining that a mage beginning to cast magic was no different from the start of a duel being declared. If they chose to argue over such fine details, then it would only prove that Enild himself had been the true coward in that situation. Hearing this, several others began to nod in agreement with Raon's reasoning. They voiced their support, stating that the Vice Lord's words made perfect sense and that the Princess of Bakr was being unreasonable. Some even went further, admitting that they could not side with her this time, no matter her status. Others remarked that despite Bakr being counted among the 6 emperors, it seemed they could not stand against Zieghardt in such matters. These comments caused Jane's composure to crumble further. Her body trembled as she struggled to process what was happening. She refused to accept the outcome, stating repeatedly that she could not accept Bakr losing to Zieghardt in such a manner. Her voice rose once again as she accused Raon of having used some kind of cowardly trick, insisting that there was no way he could have won otherwise. She argued that Anild had rushed forward on his own and therefore did not represent Balker properly. Declaring herself as the true representative of Balker, she claimed that the duel should be considered void. However, before she could continue any further, Raon suddenly appeared right in front of her. His presence was overwhelming as he began to release his aura, the sheer intensity of it causing the air around them to grow heavy. He questioned her calmly, asking whether her argument was sufficient to overturn what had already been decided. He stated firmly that no matter what kind of tantrum she threw, the agreement they had made would not be nullified. It had been a mutual decision, and there was no justification for attempting to force a different outcome now. He then added that if she truly believed in her stance, she should step forward and face him herself. Speaking as the Vice Lord of the Raging Wind Corps of Zieghardt, he made it clear that he would accept her challenge if she dared to issue one. As his aura flared even further, his presence became suffocating. He warned her that if she spoke any further in defiance, he would take it as a direct insult against Zieghardt and draw his sword without hesitation. The intensity of his killing intent sent a chilling sensation throughout Jane's entire body. Her legs weakened beneath her, and she found herself unable to remain standing. Questions filled her mind as she struggled to comprehend the overwhelming force emanating from him. She felt as though she could not even breathe properly under the pressure. In the next moment, she collapsed to her knees, trembling uncontrollably. At that critical moment, Morel stepped in to intervene. He quickly cast a spell to calm Jane, easing the suffocating pressure she had been experiencing. He then addressed Raon, asking him to leave the matter as it was. He explained that Jane had been raised as the cherished jewel of the kingdom, and due to that upbringing, she had not yet matured fully. However, Raon responded without any intention of yielding, stating that there was no reason for them to show leniency based on such excuses. From his perspective, her status did not justify her behavior. Morel let out a quiet breath before acknowledging the situation. He stated that he would offer an apology in her place, accepting responsibility for what had occurred. He then declared that they would withdraw from the matter, honoring the agreement that had been made. According to him, Balker would step back from the mission as promised. However, just as he began to turn away, Raon's voice called out from behind, stopping him in his tracks. Raon questioned where exactly he believed he was going. Morel replied that they intended to return to their kingdom, assuming that the matter had already been settled. Raon, however, calmly stated that he had not yet declared his terms. Morel appeared slightly confused, attempting to argue that the losing side was meant to leave according to the agreement. Raon reminded him that it had also been stated clearly that the winning side had the right to issue orders to the losing side. With that, he presented a contract and ordered Morel to sign it. The terms were stated plainly. As agreed under the contract, Balker would serve the Raging Wind Corps until the completion of the current mission. The implication was clear: rather than leaving, they would be required to assist under the authority of Zieghardt. At that moment, Limer stepped forward from behind with a happy tone, teasing Morel. He remarked that their vice lord was particularly sharp when it came to matters of gains and losses. After all, Morel had lost the bet, and this was simply the consequence of that outcome. Soon after, the scene shifted toward the fort where further discussions took place. Aust, the mayor who had been listening carefully, questioned whether this meant that Zieghardt and Balker would now be working together to complete the mission. However, Limer quickly denied this interpretation, stating firmly that Zieghardt would be leading the mission while Balker would merely serve under them as subordinates. The distinction was made very clear in his tone. Aust nodded thoughtfully before bringing up a separate matter. He stated that he had a request regarding the mission. He asked that the search for the missing individuals be conducted as quietly as possible. He explained that Porban was a city heavily dependent on trade, and if rumors about people disappearing were to spread widely, it could severely damage the city's stability and reputation. Such panic could bring devastating consequences. Raon listened before questioning how severe the situation had become for Aust to express such concern. In response, Aust revealed a shocking detail. He stated that within just a single week, 100 people had vanished without leaving any trace behind. Among those who had disappeared was even a swordsman who had reached the level of a sword expert, which made the situation all the more alarming and dangerous in Raon's eyes. Friends, this chapter comes to an end. To everyone watching, thank you for joining us on this adventure. If you're excited to see what happens next, let me know in the comments, ask for more chapters, and I'll keep them coming. If you'd like to support the channel and be part of our family, consider joining as a member. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help grow this community. Until next time, stay tuned.